Ladies and gentlemen, we've got ourselves another bit of a kit reveal from Kuro Games. They've been going pretty steady, dumping a lot of news regarding version 2.8. And of course, the biggest appeal of version 2.8 is without a doubt going to be the newest character. So we've actually got the full kit of Chisa ready to go, alongside her combat showcase. We're also going to be releasing a follow-up video regarding the details of none other than her weapon as well. So be tuned for all of that content coming up very soon. Without further ado, before we go ahead and start taking a look at the kit, let's just go ahead and start reacting to the combat demo first and see what Kuro's cooked up with this one. They always, in my opinion, hit it out of the park with these, so I'm very excited to see where they take Chisa with this reveal. Okay, she's kind of in, like, one of those abandoned-looking schools. Oh, she got a flashback to the past. Oh, and they're all dead. Oh, they're all TDs.
No matter where this leads, this battle, I'm all in.
Okay, they're just going right on into it.
Cooked. Down to the micro.
Okay, we're getting to see a close-up of some of those crazy scissor moves.
Dead center locked.
Seems like a lock-on ability. Applies a debuff to them. Yeah, you can see that. You can see that triangle going. Oh, what the heck is that? Hey, I'm gonna be real with you over there. I always glaze this transition whenever it pops up in a combat showcase. Whenever they do, like, their nice little artistic lead up to the tacit mark. And I think this right here, hey, that's a pretty damn good one. That's a pretty damn good one, though I do gotta say, I don't think it's the best one that we've gotten yet. I still think that title of, like, the best tacit mark appearance still has to go to either Yuno or Chuyon. Yeah, their combat showcases kind of, you know, I think they're a little bit of a step above this one. This one's still pretty damn good, though.
Meet your end. This ends here.
They really got, like, a specific sort of, like, musical theme for this unit.
Connection 7.
That move is sick, too. I really like that chainsaw slam down. Oh, she's also got to have her Pocky sticks. A big part of the lore about this character is that she's not actually a schoolgirl. This is an old outfit. This is like an old outfit from way back in the day. That's why it's all like frayed and tattered and stuff. She's kind of just like a little bit overgrown in a sense, if that makes any sense. She's like super smart, but then she also seems to have like that didn't really like grow up mentally sort of vibe. I don't really know. It's a bit of like a, I mean, I think it's just an odd decision to wear a school uniform in like your combat outfit from like, that's literally like, I don't know how old that thing is, but it's supposed to be super damn old. So like, yeah, that's like the vibe that's going on. That's the explanation for her design. I'm sure we'll have a lore reason for it later on, but yeah, just wanted to let you all know. Yeah, this is like, yeah, peaked in high school sort of vibes. Ooh. Okay, that one was... that wasn't as exciting as I thought it could have been. Wait. Is this all they did? They took the logo and then... okay. I'm gonna be real with you over there. That's definitely not as high budget as they've done before when it comes to the logo. Oh, now we got the showcase. Okay, a little bit of a teaser. Oh, she's 1v9ing. Oh, she's 1v9ing. Oh, that does not look good. Yeah, she seems to be in quite a situation. Okay, I'm gonna give my honest take on this combat showcase. It kinda didn't seem like as good as some of the other ones. Maybe I've been, like, spoiled by some of the past ones that we've seen. But this one did kind of, like, other than the music, this one did seem like it was very either, like, typical, unoriginal, or just kind of, like... I feel like even, like, the 2D animation at the start felt like it was shorter. I don't know. Yeah, maybe they're just locked in for 3.0. I feel like they could have done a little bit more with this one. But you know, maybe I'm just having the wrong perspective on it. But it didn't feel like this one was like the most exciting one that they've ever done. And to just give you guys like a bit of a quick example of the ones where I'm saying it feels like they went crazy with it. This is what I mean by like the quality of like the tacit mark animation. You know what I mean? Like, you guys kind of get what I mean. Like, I don't know. That one was fucking sick. And then let me show you the other one from, like, Chu Yan's combat showcase.
Mandate calls.
I don't know, though. I don't know. It seems like some of the previous ones, kind of really went off in comparison. But hey, you know, it is what it is. It is what it is. It could just be like a preference thing. Some people might like Chisa's one better than Yuno's. They might like it better than Chu Yan's. I'm just kind of the vibe that, like, this one, to me at least, wasn't as good as some of the past ones that we've seen. But definitely free for somebody else to have a different opinion or a different preference regarding that. That's going to be the combat demo. Now let's go ahead and let's start taking a look at the kit. And I'm going to be honest with you over here. I've had the opportunity to actually preview a bit of this kit, and it's really, really, really fucking long. It's perhaps one of the longest kits that exists in the game. So we're going to be taking it piece by piece, starting off with the simplified skill explanations, and then we'll get into the more complex ones. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about over there. We're going to have Chisa over here. She's going to be, of course, a couple of things that we've known already is that she's going to be a Havoc Broadblade user. The first limited 5-star Havoc Broadblade user. The only other one is actually Tao Chi, but we don't really talk about her. When it comes to her Ascension materials, she's actually going to be using the Abyssal Husk. Yes, she's going to be using the Abyssal Husk for her 4-cost material, and then Summer Flowers for the Ascension material. I'm not actually sure where you get Summer Flowers. I don't think they're in the game yet, so it's likely going to be in the new 2.8 Sonarosphere area. She's also going to have the Polygon cores, and one last thing for the Ascension. Yeah, it's just from the Lady of the Sea Boss. And thankfully, the Lady of the Sea Boss is one where they've kind of like fixed the rewards for. So, big W for that one. We'll be able to pre-farm that one pretty easily. Next, when it comes to her skill upgrade materials, she's, of course, going to be using the Broadblade Mat alongside more Polygon cores, and perhaps most importantly of all, her weekly boss mat is going to be Fleur de Lis, ladies and gentlemen. And you might get a little bit confused. It's not Threnodian Fleur de Lis. It's just regular Fleur de Lis down here. So make sure you don't mess up as you're going through your weekly claims, ladies and gentlemen. Thankfully, I still have 2 of my 3 claims left. And I'm going to be dedicating all of them to this challenge. So that's just something to keep in mind as you're heading closer to the weekly refresh. Hopefully you guys have at least a couple of these left because, well, I actually have a lot, so I'm actually pretty good. But for those that might not be, something to keep in mind. Now let's take a look at her combat roles, and this is where stuff is going to get a little bit spicy. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, she's a support and a healer. She amplifies the damage of other people on her team, and she also deals Resonance Liberation damage. I think that's something that we were all able to figure out from her new Echo, which is the Threnodian Leviathan Echo. And she, of course, she's also going to have the capability to apply and restack Havoc Bane, which, if you're not familiar with Havoc Bane yet, you will be now. This is a debuff that essentially got reworked, and what it does now is that it actually reduces the defense of the inflicted target by 2% per stack, 3 stacks at a baseline, 6%. But as you'll find out when it comes to Chisa's kit, she can actually make that stack limit go up, so even more defense reduction. So that's what I mean by like amplifying the team's damage. She basically reduces their defense, and that means that, well, all of your attacks against that enemy are going to deal more damage. And she's also got some other nice supportive components in her kit. So that's just what she does as like a bit of like a baseline. Now let's start getting into those simplified skill explanations. When it comes to Chisa's basic attack, the first one is just going to simply deal damage, but then she's also going to have some combo attacks that can follow up, like that kick and then that scissor snip. So the kick is going to be rending lunge, and that's going to happen after casting the second stage of your basic attack, and that's going to, well, dash towards the enemy. And then you'll normal attack after using that dash to then use the big scissor snip. So you'll see it right here, or you'll see it in the next clip that shows up over here. She does the dash, and then the big old scissor snip, and that's death snip. So that's going to deal havoc damage, and also recover HP for all nearby resonators in the team. And you can actually hold the normal button during this skill to kind of like charge the snip up for longer, and then, you know, chop. So that's like a bit about what's going on over here. Just think about it this way. She has a normal attack chain, but then it can chain into this big old snip over here, and you can get some healing down across your team. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the resonance skill. And this is something that's going to be really, really, really important to think about. Chisa's got multiple resonance skill casts, ladies and gentlemen, and that's going to be really important when we think about, well, her weapon options. But that'll be covered a bit later on. So when it comes to her resonance skill, she's going to have a first cast that just simply deals havoc damage, and most importantly, marks the target. She's also going to have an enhanced resonance skill cast that basically is going to deal havoc damage and mark the targets, but then also send her into her special chainsaw mode. And so we'll see a little bit more about what chainsaw mode does when we take a look at her Forte Circuit. But just understand that her enhanced resonance skill, or her resonance skill, is what's going to be used to trigger that transformation. When it comes to marking, well, you might be wondering what mark actually does. When marked targets take damage, Chisa inflicts havoc bane onto them. Oh, very, very, very interesting. It looks like she has constant reapplication and application of havoc bane. And so when it comes to that debuff that we're talking about, right, the one that's going to increase the amount of damage the enemies are taking, it basically is going to have full uptime at maximum stacks, just based off of how that interaction is going to work in her kit. So that's something to keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen. Permanent uptime, or basically close to permanent, depending on how you're playing. Permanent uptime on Havoc Bane in basically all content except Whimpering Waste. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the Resonance Liberation. Deal havoc damage and recover HP for all nearby resonators in the team. So we got two sources of team healing over here. Her snip attack, and then her liberation. Casting this skill is also going to send Chisa into her enhanced chainsaw mode. And so we'll naturally be seeing what that means a bit later on. So in enhanced chainsaw mode, the damage multipliers of her chainsaw basic attack and her chainsaw mode finisher attack are significantly increased. So you can probably see what's going on. You're going to want to build up your Forte Circuit, then enter chainsaw mode using your skill, and then probably just use your liberation afterwards to buff the damage of all of the attacks in that chainsaw state. A character that works very similar to this is Galbrena, where Galbrena enters like her demon mode. I know that's not the right word for it, but you know what I'm talking about. She enters like fucking demon mode using her skill, and then her liberation makes all of her demon mode attacks do more damage. It's low-key almost like the same exact mechanic, if I'm being real with you over here. It actually does seem like basically the same fucking thing. Because, like, yeah, you can see over here, attack the target and deal fusion damage. And then gain an 85% damage multiplier increase for every attack that you do in demon mode. Just replace demon mode with chainsaw mode, and you got whatever the hell is going on in Chisa's kit. Now, let's go ahead and get on into probably the key part of all of her interactions, and easily the most complex part of her kit because of how goddamn long the abilities are. We're going to see the simplified version of this, but don't worry, when we get to the long version, you'll see what I'm talking about. And that's going to be the Forte Circuit. First and foremost, the first component is going to be Sight of Unraveling Oblivion. Chisa obtains Forte Gauge when not in Chainsaw mode, and she consumes Forte Gauge to cast the Chainsaw mode basic attack. The more Forte consumed, the higher damage the next Chainsaw mode finisher attack deals. And you can probably imagine which one's the Chainsaw finisher attack. It's the one where she winds up in the fucking air and then... You get it. Threads of Bane. That's a special buff that she's going to have and actually be able to apply to her teammates. She's going to ignore some of the marked target's defense when dealing damage. That's additional defense ignore on top of the baseline defense ignore, or the defense reduction that's going to be built into Havoc Bane. So yes, she's very like defense focused as a character, either reduction or penetration. Next, in chainsaw mode, basically, she's going to have access to a special basic attack and a special finisher attack. When it comes to the basic attack, it's going to deal havoc, resonance, liberation damage, and the chainsaw mode finisher attack is going to do a couple of things. It'll deal a massive amount of resonance, liberation, havoc damage, and then also grant a shield to all nearby resonators in the team, and then casting the ability is going to end your chainsaw mode. So at a baseline, she heals, she shields, and then she applies a bunch of damage buffs, either through penetrating defense or through reducing it through havoc, bane. But don't worry, there's more. When it comes to her intro skill, it's just going to... I said this was going to be simple, but yeah, it's 3 words. It's going to deal havoc damage. Her outro skill is where stuff gets a bit interesting. All resonators in the team obtain the following effects when her outro skill is used. When an attack hits, increase the max stacks of negative status and electro rage the target can receive. So yes, she is going to be a stack uncapper, much like how Arrow Rover is able to do that for Arrow Erosion, but she's going to do it for basically every single debuff in the game, every single negative status, even the ones that haven't released yet. And that's actually why she has a special tagline for Electro Rage, which is essentially like, Electro Flare is like the Giga Dot. It's like a dot that stacks up to 10 and then gets 10 more stacks of something else. Chisa is so universal, apparently, for all negative statuses that she just goes ahead and buffs even that one too. So that's something to keep in mind. So yeah, she's going to increase the stack limit of Arrow Erosion, so likely going to be a potential replacement for, well, everyone knows about this character, right? Everyone knows how dog shit this character feels to play, and they also know that playing this character in the Arrow Erosion team means that you can't play a Rover in any other teams. So yeah, she might be a unit that just straight up replaces this guy in a lot of the teams. Inflicting negative statuses or dealing negative status damage grants you Threat of Bane. And so remember when I said that Threat of Bane was a personal buff and also a team buff? Yeah, this is how Threat of Bane is also going to be, well, impacting your teammates. Yeah, you're going to gain access to that defense ignore. At a baseline, her outro skill is going to increase the negative status cap and then also give defense penetration to every person on your team. That's what she does. Pretty solid kit. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the combat guide over here. Read the breakdown. The one for Chuyon was a little bit suspect, but hopefully this one's going to be better. So for the combat guide, she's going to deal heavy resonance liberation damage, heal and grant shields to resonators in the team, and then inflict havoc bane and reduce the target's defense. Her outro skill is going to increase the maximum number of stacks the targets can receive and allows resonators in the team to ignore defense. And so yeah, her resonance skill is also going to mark the target, and some of Chisa's skills can pull in the marked targets. Notice that you didn't see any of these interesting sort of like alternative mechanics explained a lot in the simplified kit. Well, you'll see in a while what I'm talking about. This combat guide does get like pretty goddamn complex. It starts talking about the mechanics, like things like Ring of Chainsaw and all of that. Basically, you build up this character's forte through her regular attacks, then you activate Chainsaw Mode, then you use her Liberation to buff every single attack in Chainsaw Mode, then you consume your entire Chainsaw Mode Forte Circuit by attacking, and then once it's consumed, you use the big heavy attack where you slam down, give shields, and then outro skill to another teammate. That's essentially what her kit is at a baseline. I don't really think there's going to be a lot of room to do like some crazy shit in there, but yeah, her kit has a lot of additional mechanics for it as well, and that's what you're essentially seeing over here. This isn't going to make that much sense until we start taking a look at the detailed kit overview, so let's just start going over there. When it comes to her basic attack, it's actually going to be only a 2-hit attack sequence. But then that's where those follow-up hits that I was talking about actually trigger. You know, you've got the lunge attack, the kick that I talked about before. That happens after the second basic attack, and then you do the death snip after you do the rending lunge. So, yeah, it's essentially a 4-hit attack chain that she has access to, but it's just divided out like this. Thread Withdrawn is essentially going to be another attack that she does after Death Snip. So she has up to like 5 basic attacks, and that one can actually be iframed. Yeah, that one is actually something that's going to allow you to trigger dodges. Next, when it comes to her heavy attack, she's actually going to leap into the air and attack the target. And she's also able to use a follow-up attack called Hanging Finality. She's also going to be able to use another attack called Life Thread Glide, and that's naturally going to allow her to glide. And then you can just see over here, she's got a lot of other attacks built into her kit. And so this is basically going to be like a pseudo plunge attack, and then she could follow that up with like another attack over here called Severed Facet. So you're seeing right now, right? You had this entire situation over here where the simplified kit overview told us nothing about these mechanics. They told us absolutely nothing about what was actually going on over here. The reality is that these moves, these attacks, like this severed facet stuff, this heavy attack where she's like jumping, I don't really think that they're going to be used that often in her kit. So that's just something to keep in mind. But those kind of like cool mechanics, they are going to be there, just in case you do want to access them. So yeah, she's got a lot of like cancels, where, things like her mid-air attack, they can immediately get her into like phase 2 of her basic so that she can follow up with the snips and stuff like that. But that's just something that she's got going on over there. Yeah, we've already taken a look at this. Basically, she could also trigger this heavy attack follow-up multiple times as well, after doing her initial one. It turns out that there might be some combos, there might be some rotations that actually use these. So definitely wait until release to get like a final take on all of these abilities over here. So yeah, you're seeing that her basic attack is one of the most complex ones in the game. She even has one that allows her to perform like she's got 2 ways to perform like plunging attacks as well. So that's just something to keep in mind. She's actually got perhaps some of the most basic attacks in the game. When it comes to her dodge counter, she's basically going to do the second hit of her basic attack, and that's why she's able to follow up and immediately get into Rending Lunge. I think the main focus of her basic attack is going to be finding ways to get to Death Snip, because Death Snip is the only attack over here that's considered liberation damage. And so naturally, it's probably going to be the only attack out of this entire list that actually does any damage, because she's mainly supposed to be a liberation damage dealer. So just keep that in mind. The goal is to cast this probably as many times as possible. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at her second dodge counter. So she can actually also hold a dodge after a successful dodge on the ground to cast Eye of Unraveling Retraction. This is going to attack and actually stagnate the target. And if you do this properly, right, you'll then be able to follow up with Rending Lunge, and then Rending Lunge, right, can then be followed up with Death Snip. So that's something really cool that she actually has built into her kit, like an alternative dodge counter that will apply some CC to the target and then allow you to do the whole like Rending Lunge dash thing, right? Because she has that mechanic already built into her baseline dodge counter, but you have a way to apply some additional CC after a dodge. That's pretty cool as well. Hopefully the animation and the casting of this one isn't super slow, and you still have the opportunity, right, to do like a good rotation even if you weave something like this in. So that's an additional mechanic for you to keep in mind. Now let's take a look at her detailed resonance skill. This one also stagnates the target while also marking them. And when she's not in chainsaw mode, after she casts this skill, she can press the normal attack on the ground or use a normal attack in midair to use that Rending Lunge attack. Remember that this is the one that can be followed up with the big old Death Snip. So this was actually really good. And this effect is removed when she enters chainsaw mode because she doesn't have access to those attacks. And then while she's in chainsaw mode and then on the ground, after she uses this ability, she'll immediately go into her chainsaw mode basic attack chain. That's what Saw Ring Blitz is. It's just her basic attack chain in chainsaw mode. Next, Serrated Loop, and this is where the transformation is going to begin. While on the ground and the Ring of Chainsaw, or her Forte Circuit, is filled, Resonance Skill is replaced with Serrated Loop. And this is going to stagnate, deal havoc damage, and pull in the targets. A lot of CC going on over here. That's basically all the CC in the game. And casting this skill is going to send Chisa into chainsaw mode and then replace Resonance Skill with Eye of Unraveling. gives you access to that again. And pressing normal attack shortly after casting this skill is going to get you immediately into the second stage of your chainsaw attack. And then holding the resonance skill while casting this skill will allow you to continually attack and pull in nearby targets. So she even has more CC built into, well, holding it right after you begin the transformation. So yeah, she's got additional CC built into that, and then she can transition into her basic attack chain following that CC. So yeah, she's got like, I guess like a whole like, maybe she'll like transform and then like swing her chainsaw into an enemy and then just like hold it there. That sounds pretty brutal, but that actually is what it sounds like. And it seems like some suction, some traction is also going to be built into that interaction. So yeah, probably a good Wii-Wah mechanic for people to take a look at. Now, let's take a look at the Resonance Liberation. She's going to deal havoc damage, recover HP for everybody on the team, and then she's going to be in a special state called Woven Myriad Convergence for 15 seconds afterwards. And when she's not in chainsaw mode, she can press the normal attack after this to immediately go into the second stage, and it can be used in midair, close to the ground. Always nice to have that flexibility. And so what Convergence does is it basically increases the damage multipliers of all of her chainsaw attacks by 120%. Yeah, that's a lot, guys. 120% is a massive amount. It's a massive amount for multipliers to increase. But what this also probably means is that her baseline multipliers aren't really that high in the first place. That's what I'm just going to assume. Without this liberation up, I don't think she's going to deal any damage at all. And I think even with this liberation up, she might not really deal any damage either. Because this, to me, is basically saying her baseline motion values are complete dog shit. Otherwise, she would be overpowered. That's how much 120% is. So we'll wait and see what the actual motion values are, but that's just something to keep in mind. If I were to use Galbraina as a comparison, we saw that she had basically a completely similar mechanic. But then you look at the multiplier increase, and it's only 85% for Galbraina. Galbraina already deals a fuck ton of damage at 85%. Chisa's getting 120% on every ability. Knowing that she's a support, she's probably not gonna have that much damage outside of this state. That's just what I'm going to assume. Otherwise, this character is going to be insanely broken. Don't get your hopes up too high. Ring of Chainsaw consumed by Saw Ring Blitz in Chainsaw mode dodge. Wait, is there like a bug? Is there like a typo in here? Well, let's just forget that this line is even in here. That just looks like a typo. The bonus damage multiplier for Saw Ring Eradication granted by Saw Ring Blitz in Chainsaw mode dodge counter when the Ring of Chainsaw is consumed additionally increases by 120%. Basically, that big slam attack that she does, which is like the finisher that grants the shield to the entire team, that one also gets the damage buff multiplier. That's essentially what it is, because these attacks consume the Forte, and then once the Forte is consumed, you do the big ending attack. The more Forte you consumed, the more damage that ending attack does. So that's the explanation for that over there. Huge damage buff over here. 120% on everything. I feel like that's a lot. Who knows what her damage is going to be outside of this state. So maybe main DPS is not a possibility, ladies and gentlemen. Now, let's look at easily the most wordy part of this character's kit. And I'm going to be honest with you over here. I see no reason for why this shit is so long. Let's just do a preview for how long this Forte Circuit is. Brother! It's this long! This is like an entire separate video just on her fucking Forte. This is a disaster. I don't know why this needed so many words. Her kit isn't that complex. This might be like the most absurdly wordy ability breakdown I've ever seen for how actually complex her kit is. Because it's not that complex. Let's just get this one started. I might need a cough drop in the middle of this. Fuck. Forte Circuit. Site of Unraveling. Oblivion. Let's start with Unseen Snare. So, Chisa inflicts Unseen Snare on the target for 30 seconds in the following 4 ways. Let's keep in mind how long this debuff is. Hitting a target with their skill, this is the mark. Hitting a target within a certain period of time after casting Serrated Loop. Hitting a target with a dodge counter, Eye of Unraveling Retraction. Remember, that's the delayed dodge counter that she has, where she holds the dodge button instead of attacking. And then the fourth method is just simply locking onto a target. When targets marked by Unseen Snare take direct damage from resonators on the team, Chisa inflicts 1 stack of Havoc Bane on them, and the effect can be triggered once every 2 seconds. So yeah, this is essentially the 4 ways that she's able to maintain near permanent uptime, because 30 seconds is a long fucking time. And, you know, 1 rotation takes less than 30 seconds, so it's constantly being reapplied. She has permanent uptime on Havoc Bane. So once again, that defense reducing effect, and the fact that Chisa's also able to increase the upper limit of the stacks, that's a pretty damn big defense reduction. That's like close to like 10+% permanently across her rotation and across her team's rotation. And so yeah, the Threat of Bane debuff is also even more defense reduction or ignore. When dealing damage to targets affected by Unseen Snare, ignore 18% of the target's defense. So she reduces defense with Havoc Bane and then allows her entire team, because remember, Threat of Bane applies to her teammates via outro skill. Her entire team is also going to ignore 18% defense on top of her baseline Havoc Bane defense ignore. So yeah, she is like the defense ignore queen. She ruins defensive enemies. Now let's take a look at Chainsaw mode. And this is where shit's going to get a little bit wordy. While in Chainsaw mode, Chisa basically unlocks all of these chainsaw attacks. Don't worry if I'm skipping them. We'll cover them in detail later. And consume the Ring of Chainsaw, which is her Forte Circuit on hit. Yes, her Chainsaw mode attacks cost the Chainsaw mode resource. So now let's take a look at Saw Ring Blitz. Oh boy. Saw Ring Blitz chains up to 3 consecutive attacks. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is a 3-hit attack chain. Press the normal attack button to start the combo from stage 1. Hold the normal attack to start it from stage 2. So yeah, she has 2 different ways, 2 different inputs to start the attack chain. One that's a basic press that starts her at stage 1. The hold press starts her at stage 2. You can hold the normal attack while casting Saw Ring Blitz stage 2 to continuously attack the target. So yeah, she has like a hold mode. Think actually a little bit like Corrin from ZZZ. She has like a hold mode where she could just like attack the character. And then stage 2 is automatically followed up with stage 3. And when casting Saw Ring Blitz stage 2, she can release the normal attack button or dodge without directional input to automatically cast Saw Ring Blitz stage 2 Discordance. Yes, it's got an alternative cast that's going to deal havoc damage. I assume that this one is like, you use it as like a bit of an iframe, I imagine. Yeah, it's going to allow you to basically deal damage and then also trigger dodges at the same time. So yeah, it's basically a built-in dodge into her kit as well. She can also press normal attack shortly after casting Blitz 2 Discordance to cast Blitz stage 3. So she basically has a follow-up to like that dodge attack that she has. And while casting Saw Ring Blitz stage 3, she can hold the normal attack button to immediately continue attacking the target. And Saw Ring Blitz stage 3 is automatically followed up with Saw Ring Eradication. She can also release the normal attack button during Saw Ring Blitz stage 3 to automatically cast Fall Tone. You guys are probably understanding what's going on over here. Even in her chainsaw state, she has like a bunch of like varying attacks that she can do. She basically has a cancel that she can do in stage 2 to trigger like a dodge attack that attacks while at the same time potentially triggering perfect dodges. And then she has her third attack that essentially gets followed up with the big boom Saw Ring Eradication that grants the shield to everybody on the team. But she can also release that button to instead use Fall Tone instead, and I guess skip the big ol' slamming attack that she does. So yeah, there's a lot of shit even in this basic attack chain. But hopefully that wasn't too confusing. Next, she's got a dodge counter that basically takes up an entire fucking page. While in Chainsaw mode, press normal attack to following a successful dodge counter to cast Chainsaw mode dodge counter. Makes sense. She can also press the normal attack following the dodge counter to use Saw Ring Blitz stage 3. She can also hold the normal attack while casting the dodge counter to sustain the attack. And then when the dodge counter ends, she's automatically going to use phase 3. So I guess you might have to be a little bit careful. You might accidentally trigger eradication if you're using dodge counters. And I guess you got to make sure to release the normal attack button. Make sure you don't hold it. Otherwise, you might accidentally end chainsaw mode a little bit too early. So I guess that's something to keep in mind. That might be a little bit of a skill cap thing or a bit of a skill issue built into her kit. So yeah, she can also release the normal attack button or dodge backwards while casting the dodge counter to cast Discordance, which can also trigger more dodges. So I guess she even has a mechanic built into her kit to, like, repeatedly trigger dodge counters. So maybe she actually does have some on-fielding capability, because I don't really know why she has such a complex thing in here. Yeah, this might be one of the most complex basic attacks. Her regular basic attack is already crazy, and then she's got this Forte enhanced basic attack as well that also goes crazy. And just one thing to keep in mind is that all of her attacks in this chainsaw state, even the dodge counter, but as you can see over here, they're all going to be considered liberation damage. Now let's take a look at Saw Ring Eradication. While in chainsaw mode, she casts Eradication in the following 2 ways. Press normal attack after casting Saw Ring Blitz Stage 3 Fall Tone, or press the normal attack after consuming all Ring of Chainsaw with either Saw Ring Blitz or a dodge counter. I would imagine that you probably actually want to consume all of your Forte Circuit before using your enhanced heavy attack, so make sure you are careful with accidentally triggering it with this part of the chain over here. It's entirely considered liberation damage. It also deals havoc damage, and it's also going to give people a shield. And every point of Ring of Chainsaw that got consumed by your basic attacks and dodge counters is going to increase the damage multiplier of the next eradication. She also gains a buff from using her liberation of 120% multiplier as well. So do keep in mind that this is supposed to be a huge attack. It sounds similar to me to like Brandt's Anchor. Hopefully it does a decent amount of damage, because you are like building up your entire rotation just for this one big move. So I hope it does at least a good bit of something. Now, let's take a look at Chainsaw Fever. While in Chainsaw mode, Life Thread Jetstream is replaced with Chainsaw Fever. So we probably want to figure out what Light Thread Jetstream actually is, because that's another fucking component in her kit. Most would say her kit actually looked a little bit complete beforehand, but don't worry, there's more. When Chisa is not in chainsaw mode and has more than 10 points of Life Thread Jetstream, she can consume 50 points of Life Thread Jetstream to cast Life Thread Glide in the following 5 ways. Press dodge in midair while casting a heavy attack before landing, and while in midair, press a dodge while casting Resonant Skill, Eye of Unraveling, or Rending Lunge before landing. Dodge forward shortly after casting Thread Withdrawn. Press dodge when launched into midair, and press dodge before landing after casting her glide. So she seems to have a special glide built into her kit that has like its own resource. But I'm going to be honest, like, what the hell is this? I don't even know if this, like, does any damage. I can see over here that it has, like, the ability to pull in enemies that are marked by her, but she only has, like, 4 ways to mark people, too. And then during the skill, hold the dodge to glide a short distance on her weapon, and she can trigger successful dodges after using this ability. I don't think you're going to use this at all in combat. Maybe you'll be able to use this as like a neat little goofy thing in exploration, but just keep in mind, I don't really know what this is supposed to be used for, because again, I don't think it deals any damage. It's basically just something that's triggered after you like cancel an attack before it lands. I don't know what the practical use cases of this are supposed to be, but from what I'm seeing is that she like jumps on her scissors and then starts gliding somewhere. So maybe they just wanted to have like sword flying in the game, and that's just like one way that they've decided to do it. Yeah, maybe they just wanted to add sword flying to the game. Essentially, when she's in chainsaw mode, that goofy little glide thing gets removed and is replaced with Chainsaw Fever. So, Chainsaw Fever is at 100% by default. When Chisa goes on for a period of time without dealing damage, Chainsaw Fever will rapidly deplete. This is essentially, it sounds like to me, like an overworld exploration mechanic. In practical gameplay within the TOA or WeWa, I don't see any universe where your Chainsaw Fever would ever go down to 0, because I don't know how you're not damaging enemies at all in those game modes, so keep that in mind. So once it reaches 0, Chisa's going to enter the burnout state and exit chainsaw mode. And then while in chainsaw mode, she's going to reset chainsaw fever when dealing damage with, like, basically any ability. And while in the burnout state, Ring of Chainsaw will rapidly deplete. And once it reaches 0, she's going to exit the burnout state. I don't know why it's, like, necessary for this to be in here. Maybe they just didn't want her to be in chainsaw mode all the time when she's in the overworld. It seems like an odd limitation to me. Or maybe it's due to the fact that you actually want chainsaw mode to deplete in the overworld. Because apparently, I guess Zani has a bit of an issue where her liberation doesn't time out until it, like, times out. I don't know. It just... these two things over here seem like unnecessary adds to her kit. I don't think they take anything away, but maybe they're just there to, like, spice up her overworld capabilities. But yeah, for, like, meta purposes, actual strength, blah, 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 mechanics, I don't really think these are going to contribute at all. We've just covered all this life thread, chainsaw fever, overworld stuff. Now let's go ahead and start reading the rest of this Forte Circuit. Chisa can hold up to 100 points of Ring of Chainsaw. Hitting a target with a normal attack and resonant skill Eye of Unraveling is going to grant Ring of Chainsaw. Using her Liberation is going to grant her 40, and then using her intro skill is going to grant her 20. So remember, the goal is to get to 100 points, enter Chainsaw mode, and then go crazy. The goal is actually going to be get 60 points. Use her Liberation to, I don't know, get you some more points, and then probably use your skill to then transform after you hit 100 and then start consuming all the stuff. So that's going to be my take on this. I like that her Liberation grants her 40 points. You should be able to do it a little bit faster. Now let's take a look at Light Thread Jetstream and take a look at this resource over here. She can hold up to 100 points. She continuously obtains it over time, and she obtains 100 points upon defeating a target. Yeah, this is just an exploration mechanic. Exiting chainsaw mode resets Light Thread Jetstream to the max limit, and she cannot obtain it passively after casting the glide. Yeah, this is just... she gains 100 points after dealing damage. You know what I mean? It's an exploration mechanic, this whole glide thing. So don't read too much into it if you're focusing on the combat, but just know that she'll have some cool little overworld stuff that she can do. So we've gotten the full explanation of her forte. Basically, the way that I'm going to break her kit down to you is this, before we get into the intro skills. The character's goal is to get onto the field, use a bunch of her abilities, mark the target, do all of that, apply the debuffs, and then build up maybe 60 to 100 points of her Ring of Chainsaw. Then she's going to enter Chainsaw mode, and then use her Liberation to buff all of Chainsaw mode's damage. Then she's going to consume all 100 points using her Chainsaw attacks, and then use her finisher attack after all the points are consumed to deal massive damage to the target, apply a shield to everybody, and then she's going to outro skill to somebody else, and then her outro skill is going to provide a debuff cap limit increase, and then she's going to apply defense reduction to everybody on her team, or defense ignore to everybody on her team. And that's essentially just what her kit is. This is without a doubt one of the most needlessly wordy kits. It's cool that she has a bunch of these unique mechanics built in to, like, alternate her basic attacks and stuff like that, but it is incredibly long for what it actually does, because she just marks targets, applies Havoc Bane to them, then she attacks them, builds up her forte, then goes into chainsaw mode, swings, deals some fucking damage, then does her big attack, shields, and then buffs the entire team with her outro. That's essentially it. It's not really that crazy, but they made it seem really fucking crazy. Intro skill, Reverberance Return. She's gonna attack the target, dealing havoc damage. And when not in chainsaw mode, she can press the normal attack after this to go into the second stage of her basic. And if she is in chainsaw mode, she can also go to the second stage of her basic. So yeah, this is going to allow you to then use Rending Lunge and then the snip. I imagine that her rotation is going to be, she enters the field with her intro skill, does her second basic, Rending Lunge, and then her snip. Then she uses her Liberation, and then she's at 100 forte. Then she's going to transform using her skill, and then just do a bunch of basic attacks until her ring is gone, and then use her final big basic, do the big swing, and then her concerto is going to be filled. That's what I imagine. I don't think her rotation is actually going to be that long. this seems like something that makes a lot of sense. And I imagine that this is what her rotation is going to look like. I don't think it's going to be that long, but maybe it actually will be. Now let's take a look at our outro skill. She's going to grant the resonant thread of closure to all nearby resonators in the team for 20 seconds. Actually kind of short. It's actually not that long, but you'll see why. When an attack hits, increase the max stacks of negative status and electro rage the target can receive by 3 for 15 seconds. So it's only 3. Do keep that in mind. So Aero Erosion goes from 3 to 6. Spectral Frazzle goes from 10 to 13. Havoc Bane goes from 3 to 6 as well. So yeah, think about it this way. Havoc Bane will then become a 12% defense reduction debuff. That's a lot higher than 6%. It's about 100% more than 6%. So that's looking pretty damn good. That looks pretty damn strong. And then remember, Thread of Bane also gives 18% defense ignore. So 12% defense reduction on top of 18% defense ignore. It's not going to equal to 30% defense reduction. There's like diminishing, you know, because you know what I'm talking about with math. I'm praying you do. If you don't, go back to school. So yeah, mainly it's going to be, I think, an enabler for erosion, as well as an enabler for Havoc Bane. I don't think this is going to be important or relevant at all for Spectral Frazzle teams, because going from 10 to 13, or sorry, 20 to 13, I don't know how many stacks it is. Like, Spectral Frazzle doesn't get that much better by increasing its stack limit by 3, but Aero Erosion and Havoc Bane will get a lot better by increasing the number of stacks by 3. And with this only lasting 20 seconds, it's not that big of a deal, because think about it this way. If you hit an enemy in the last 2 seconds, they'll still be debuffed for the full 15 seconds, or you'll still have the Threat of Bane buff for the full 15 seconds. That's something to keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen. So this can actually last upwards of up to 35 seconds. If you hit an enemy with a negative status in like the last second of the debuff, you'll still have the additional 15 seconds. Unfortunately, though, there is a bit of a limit. There is a bit of a setback when it comes to triggering the Threat of Bane debuff. You'll have to inflict negative statuses or deal negative status damage to get that 18% defense ignore. So there's only going to be a couple of characters in the game that will be able to trigger it. For example, Yuno can't trigger it, Galbrina can't trigger it, Chuyan can't trigger it, Shorekeeper can't trigger it, Augusta can't trigger it, Frolova can't, Lupa can't, Partithia can, because she applies Aero Erosion on her attacks. Chikona can, because she applies Aero Erosion. Zani can, because she deals Spectral Frazzle damage. Yeah, this is an important one. Zani deals entirely Spectral Frazzle damage when she's in her special state, right? It is considered both heavy attack and Spectral Frazzle damage. So she can trigger it too, so can Phoebe, and the only other unit that can trigger it is probably Spectral Rover. You might be able to do some shit where you convert Havoc Bane stacks to Aero Erosion, and I guess that would allow you to trigger it as well, but Spectral Rover is going to be the other main character. And so, as you can see, that kind of heavily limits the teams that Chisa is going to have available on release that want to make use of this outro skill. But the reality is that she's basically meant to be the support, the healer for negative status teams. And it's kind of clear that she's a bit of a replacement, at least premium unit wise, for Aero Rover. But the great news about how she's designed is the fact that she seems to be Aero Rover, but for every negative status team. She seems to be the Shorekeeper for negative status teams. And that, to me, seems to be a pretty good role to have, a pretty good role to play. Now, negative status teams have, like, their dedicated limited 5-star support. You feel less of a need to use Shorekeeper, right? Like, this is a common team that that Shorekeeper was used on. I think Chisa's probably going to be a little bit better than Shorekeeper over here. Everyone knows this team, where you use SK, Phoebe, and then Zani, and this is the Zani hypercarry team. It might be better to have Chisa in here because of those crazy amounts of defense reduction buffs that you're going to be able to have. Chisa might be in this slot, right? Everyone already knows about the Aero Rover team, right? Well, Aero Rover might just be replaced by Chisa over here. Those are, frankly, actually the only two teams that Chisa's going to be, I think, used on in release. I assume Chisa might actually be used in this comp as well. Pretend Shorekeeper's Chisa. She might be used in this composition too. Right? That's like 3 teams on release. So maybe you're also going to be able to slot Chisa in on other teams where there aren't negative statuses going around. But I don't know if that's going to be a good recommendation for me on my end, because then you're not going to be able to like use any of her fucking outro skill. Yeah, her outro skill is not going to have any use case at all. And the only thing you'll be getting is her 12% defense ignore from via Havoc Bane if you don't have negative status suppliers and negative status damage dealers on your team. So I hope we just understand that at a baseline. You might get a little bit less mileage out of her than you thought, unless you want to build out more negative status teams. But from what we're seeing over here, it does look like negative statuses are going to be something that get fleshed out a lot more as time actually does go on. So I kind of view this as like a bit of a promise that, yes, negative statuses will get support. This character will be useful, don't worry. It's just she might not have a lot of teams on release. Now let's start taking a look at some inherent abilities. The first one's going to be Inescapable Fate. When a resonator in the team defeats a target marked by Unseen Snare, the cooldown of Chisa's resident skill, Eye of Unraveling, is reset. That's like neat. I don't think it's that useful in practical situations though. This was essentially implied that you would need to go back to her to like continually re-trigger the buff. I think that this is functionally one of the most useful and inherent skills in the game, and it's basically only going to be used in the overworld. Yeah, I don't really think anyone takes use of like resonant skills, regular skills resetting after an enemy's killed. That doesn't really happen that often. You don't even really do that in WeWa. You'll just spend more time on your actual DPS on the team. Now we're going to have inherent skill all ends here. Casting intro skill, Reverberance Return, or her Resonance Liberation is going to give her a 20% havoc damage bonus and a 20% healing bonus for 12 seconds. Very neat. And when resonators in the team with Threat of Bane defeat a target marked by Unseen Snare, Chisa gains the Sight of Unraveling. And while in Sight of Unraveling, Chisa inflicts Unseen Snare that lasts for 30 seconds on targets damaged by resonators in the team with Threat of Bane. So yeah, that's just another way that she's going to continually apply her Havoc Bane debuffs. Think about it this way, ladies and gentlemen. This essentially means that in Whimpering Wastes, every single enemy that gets hit is going to be marked. Essentially, when a teammate that has their outro skill active, and do keep this in mind, they need to be able to apply negative statuses to get Threat of Bane. You can't just slot in like a Jian on her team, and then he's going to get Threat of Bane. They have to be a character that deals negative status damage or applies negative statuses. Otherwise, they can't get Threat of Bane. If they have the Threat of Bane buff, if they kill a target, she's going to gain Sight of Unraveling. And if you damage any targets after killing one, then you'll mark all of them, and they'll all get marked with Havoc Bane. She should be an amazing character in Whimpering Wastes because of how this mechanic works. Enemies are constantly getting slain, and she's constantly having this buff up, and they're constantly getting marked, and there's more and more Havoc Bane that's getting applied. That's something very neat that she has built into her kit. All of this, as you can see over here, this is one of the wordiest kit breakdowns, one of the wordiest kit explanations that I've ever seen in the game. And at a baseline, you can probably see that the role that she's supposed to play is a negative status generalist support. She is Shorekeeper for negative status teams. The unfortunate part about her existence and her placement in the meta is that there's not really a lot of negative status teams. However, we have been needing a rover replacement for quite a while, specifically in this team, because the reality is that without Arrow Rover, this team kind of is shit. It's like not really that good, and Arrow Rover feels super necessary for this team to function, which is a bit rough, right? Because they enable so much with their ability to amplify arrow damage and then also increase the stack limit. And then increasing the stack limit just makes these two characters scale exponentially. Chisa's going to have that same exact role with the stack limit and have a lot of defense ignore built in, but you won't have Arrow Rover's amplification. So maybe that's something that's going to like make her feel balanced relative to, you know, the other option that you could choose. Another thing to keep in mind is that the only other teams that she's going to be used on is going to feature these two characters. And I'm going to be honest with you. This team already functions perfectly fine without her. because you'll be able to, right, just slot in Spectral Rover to complete like the 3-person lineup, or you can put in Shorekeeper, or you can put in her. But the reality is that if you have Shorekeeper or Spectral Rover, she's like not necessary at all. She's like a side grade, potentially a small upgrade over those other 2 options. And it's like, well, if you want her and you really like negative status teams, she'll be great, and she'll be able to free up your Shorekeeper for other teams, because guess what? I'll say it this way. Shorekeeper is more important for a team like this than she is for a team like this. That is an undeniable thing that's true. She's way more important in this lineup. She's also really, really, really important in this lineup, right? Shorekeeper is way more important in the Galbraina, Chuyan, or the Yuno Augusta team than she is in this lineup. And similarly, you could just have Chisa come in to be the character that makes these debuff teams way more playable while freeing up your Shorekeeper too. But I'm not going to go ahead and say that she seems like the most priority pick ever, because you could just not have her and solve any issue not having her has with free-to-play units or the most generalist support in the game. And to me, that's just... I don't think she's necessarily the most high-value one ever, because you could just not get her and everything will still get the job done. And that's kind of like the situation. And it is what it is, right? But, like I said before, she's a character that can only grow with value over time. She's introducing Havoc Bane. She does it very well. And she's also going to have more and more of that upcoming support in the future, because she is going to be essential to all of these new archetypes that come out. So I would say your decision to pull Chisa just from looking at her kit at a baseline, and of course, we'll be able to revisit her when she's released. Your decision to pull her should be based off of whether or not you feel like supporting negative statuses in the future. That'll be that for this one, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you all thought about our Chisa breakdown. And peace out. I know it was a long one, but thank you for staying.